Hello. On Sunday, we all filled in a census form, and what we said about our lives will be kept under lock and key for a century. But how has Britain changed in the past 100 years? It's a remarkable story. It's the history of every one of us.
Today, we discover how a nation of meat and two veg lovers became hooked on curry. We send Phil Tufnell down the pit as he faces up to the challenges of work in 1911.
It's pretty hard.
It's back to the classroom for the 11 plus, and record producer extraordinaire Pete Waterman remembers his school days.
Now, Pete, you've been a huge success as a record producer, amongst many other things. Did you take the 11 plus?
No, I didn't. I just knew I wouldn't pass it, so I didn't bother. I went train spotting instead.
Another great love of your life.
Absolutely.
But did you have the choice not to do it? Or you just skived off?
I just skived off.
No regrets about that?
No, not at all. I mean, you know, obviously, in hindsight, you look back and I wish I'd have found Shakespeare when I was 16 and not 60, you know. But then you can't turn back the clock. It's been good to me, life.
Yes, well, more of that later. When I took the 11 plus, it was a brand new idea. In fact, it was one of the biggest changes of the past 100 years. It was meant to give all children a better chance at an education.
Twins David and John Hill may be just 25 minutes apart in age, but their lives have taken very different directions. The twins were born in Dalston, in northeast London in 1945, to their carpenter father, Ernest, and dressmaker mother, Ivy.
I don't recall having had friends as a young child, because I had my twin brother.
We've been close for as long as I can remember.
Coming from a poor working-class family, they didn't expect to remain at school for very long.
I think there was a general assumption that we'd all leave school just like everybody else in our area did, just like everybody else in the family. General assumption that you just leave school.
Before World War II, the census reveals that most children left school at 14, unless their families could afford to pay to keep them on. But all of that was to change with the 1944 Education Act. This set out a new vision for the future, that ability, not class or money, would determine a child's secondary education.
Add together 5, 3, and 7.
Every child would sit the 11 plus test, which would decide which school they should go in.
Mummy and Daddy want me to pass, really.
Yes.
Daddy said if I don't, I'll get a thick ear.
Indeed.
Those who passed would go to grammar school, while those who failed would go to technical or secondary modern school. In the mid-50s, just like thousands of others, twins Dave and John sat down to take their 11 plus.
I just enjoyed exams. I had a good memory, I liked writing, I was an exam success person.
I remember taking it, actually. I went into the room, sat down at a desk, was extremely nervous. I probably went to pieces with nerves because it just wasn't my thing, being an academic. Don't think I completed the whole exam paper. Extremely relieved when the exam was over.
At the end of the school year, the long-awaited test results arrived.
All it said was, David has passed the 11 plus, John hasn't, so the local grammar school will be getting in touch with David. The moment I realised it was really important, me passing the 11 plus, was when, after the interview, Mum took me into a cafe. I'd never been in a cafe to have a cup of coffee and a cream cake, and that was my treat. And Mum said, I'm so proud of you, Dave. You know, you passed the 11 plus, you're going to go to grammar school.
No, there was no tea and cake for me, and I guess at the time I thought that Dave deserved his tea and cakes as a reward for his achievement.
The twins' parents divorced. The boys and their mum moved to the south coast. There, Dave was awarded a place at the academic West Lane Grammar School.
This was a good place for me. It seemed to value me. Accordingly, I valued it. I settled down here.
Meanwhile, John was 5 miles away, at Queen's Park County Secondary Modern School, where the focus was on a vocational and practical education.
I was good at metalwork, I excelled in that. Other subjects, no. I don't actually think I learned much academically. Fond memories of some of the people in my form, hard nuts if you like. At that age you gave as good as you got. You learnt a lot about life. You had to look after yourself. There was no twin brother to defend me. You had to defend yourself.
Sit down, my boys. Because you're in a grammar school, you will all be studying a modern language.
My school had a big library. I studied in the library. John's school, I think, had a scrappy little library. My teachers had degrees. John's teachers didn't have degrees. In my school, we were told to reach for the stars. John's school, you were told to behave yourself, get out there, get yourself a job, keep your nose clean.
At grammar school, Dave gained 10 O-levels and 3 A-levels, which meant he could apply for university. John left secondary modern school with plenty of memories, but no qualifications.
I left school on a Friday, age 15. And I started work on Monday, age 15.
After a series of manual jobs, John became a successful carpenter. David got a degree from Manchester University and became a teacher.
I wanted to give something back. I'd seen what education had done for me, and I wanted to do that for other working class kids.
Dave and John had been separated at 11, supposedly on the basis of their intelligence. It would take a serious car accident some 25 years later for this decision to be called into question.
I smashed my right wrist quite badly, had to have a steel plate inserted. Mentally, it did some brain damage. It altered my short-term memory.
Doctors were concerned about the possibility of permanent brain damage, so John was given an IQ test.
And I came out with a score of 126, 125, 126, and Dave said, yeah, that's the same as mine.
Finding out that John had the same IQ as me really didn't surprise me, because I'd never had any doubts about his intelligence.
The revelation that they were equally intelligent has made the twins reflect on their experiences of an education system that separated them more than 50 years ago.
I think the system was designed to keep the social structure of the country as it was, so kids like my brother, millions of other kids, they could have had such a better schooling had they not been pushed into secondary modern schools where, despite wonderful teachers, they were labelled as low achievers.
Perhaps surprisingly, John doesn't share Dave's views.
I think the 11 plus was a very good exam, and I think the grammar school system was a very good system. Yes, it did differentiate between the brighter and the not so bright, but all, I think, for good reason.
Ultimately, widespread unhappiness with the 11 plus and the two-tier system led to reform. In the mid-60s, a new comprehensive system of secondary education was introduced, which didn't select on the basis of ability.
This fine new comprehensive school for about 1,500 boys is one of several built in Coventry since the war. The buildings are attractively laid out, the classrooms light and airy, and the equipment excellent.
But comprehensives were themselves to become mired in controversy for failing to lift standards. Dave is so passionate about equal opportunities for all pupils that today he is a professor of education and a political activist.
My life experience just makes me, as I get older, more and more determined to do what I can to create a fairer society.
Though Dave and John were divided by the education system, they've not been divided as brothers.
He's my best mate. John's my best mate. We phone each other every day. Our families go on holiday together. We have a laugh.
Dave and I are extremely close. I guess our different paths in life might have brought us closer together because there's been no competition between us.
And they're still together. They're with us now, John and Dave. John, do you ever wonder what might have happened in life if you had passed the 11 plus and gone to grammar school?
No, not at all. I thoroughly enjoyed my secondary education. I also had the added benefit, I guess, of my twin brother going to grammar school. So through that, I could experience some of the grammar school life.
So today's system wouldn't have done you any better. That suited you absolutely right.
Exactly.
So Dave, you came from a working class background and off to grammar school. Did you find that tough? Was it difficult to adapt?
It was. I went to 2 grammar schools, and the first one, I was one of the very few working class kids there. I used to get caned regularly. I was a scrapper. I then moved to a different grammar school, and there it was very different. We were given choices. I had the choice. I became a teacher, then a lecturer, then a professor, travel all over the world. I have a great life. But I had choices which were denied millions and millions of working class kids at what was then a class divided system, mainly middle class grammar schools, mainly working class secondary moderns.
But as we discovered, you both have the same IQ. And do you have shared skills? I mean, you became a carpenter. Are you good at that kind of stuff?
Not at all. John's looked after me all my life. John's done all my stuff, my house upkeep, etc. And I help John in various ways as well. No, we're different, but complementary, not competitive.
Talking about enjoying the kind of education you had, Pete, I don't think school was your happiest days.
No, in fact, if I could not go, that was the happiest days of my life. I went transpotting or fishing. I loved 2 things, or 3 things at school, though, that have made me what I am. I loved geography, I loved history, and I loved mathematics. I loved them. And obviously mathematics went with the music, but the rest I had no time for at all. I didn't understand reading and writing, you know. It was too painful for me. It was painful, really was.
You have admitted you couldn't read and write properly till you were in your, what, your 30s?
Yes.
So how on earth did you slip through the...
Because I didn't lie to people. I never ever, you know, tried to kid people that I could read. It was, you know, when I joined the railway, the first thing I said to the guy they put me with was, look, I can't read and write, mate. He said, can you do sums? I said, yeah. He said, well, great, I'm terrible at sums, so I'll read and write the notices, you add up our bonus at the end of the week and we'll make a fine team. And that's worked for me. And we've gone and bumped into things because we didn't have the education, but we're not any poorer for it.
But to me, bumping into things was your way of learning life.
Yeah.
Learning about people.
That's been an education, I have to tell you. But for most youngsters back in 1911, no matter how hard they studied, they were destined for a life of graft. But how tough